Welcome back to my channel. Have you ever noticed the bizarre, unsettling amount of time the aging abuser spends entirely locked away in the bathroom? You might have completely brushed it off as just a strange, harmless quirk of getting older. But behind that locked door, hidden from the world, a deeply disturbing psychological ritual is taking place. We are exposing their darkest secret. Society rarely discusses the pathetic reality of the aging predator. We picture them as these eternal, untouchable masterminds causing endless chaos. But as their physical charm aggressively fades and their manipulative tactics stop working, their world violently shrinks. The grand stage they once commanded is reduced to the cold, lonely tiles of a locked, isolated bathroom. To truly understand this bizarre physical compulsion, you must look at the exact mechanics of narcissistic supply. For decades, they fed entirely on the vital energy, admiration, and fear of others. But as they grow old, people start walking away. Their audience disappears. Left with a terrifying, agonizing void, they desperately seek the cheapest, fastest dopamine hit available. The bathroom becomes their ultimate psychological fortress. It is the only room in the house where they can guarantee absolute, unquestioned isolation. Behind that heavy, locked door, there are absolutely no expectations, no challenging questions, and no mirrors reflecting their profound, undeniable failures. They are entirely safe to retreat completely into their sick fantasies. Intimacy with a real human being requires vulnerability, a trait they entirely lack. True connection demands an emotional exchange they are completely incapable of providing. So, they violently reject reality in favor of highly controlled, isolated self-gratification. It is not about healthy physical release, it is entirely about maintaining an illusion of absolute, supreme control. In their youth, they could easily manipulate multiple partners, constantly securing external validation to prop up their incredibly fragile ego. Now, their physical decay and toxic history make them entirely repulsive to healthy individuals. The private act becomes a pathetic, desperate substitute for the profound human admiration they can absolutely no longer secure in the open. This secretive habit reveals the terrifying, inescapable emptiness of their core existence. While you are out living a genuine life, experiencing real love and profound connection, they are literally hiding in a tiny room, desperately chasing a fleeting, hollow physical sensation. It is the absolute pinnacle of their psychological bankruptcy and profound, undeniable loneliness. They use this hidden compulsion to rapidly self-soothe their crippling internal anxiety. When reality becomes far too heavy, when they are forcefully reminded of their total insignificance, they retreat to the bathroom. The physical release acts as a highly temporary, chemical bandage over a massive, bleeding psychological wound that will absolutely never, ever truly heal itself. Today, we are completely pulling back the curtain on this deeply pathetic, hidden behavior. We are going to clinically dissect the agonizing downfall of the aging abuser. Prepare yourself to look directly at the incredibly sad, undeniable reality of what happens when a lifelong manipulator runs entirely out of options. The truth about their secret life will absolutely shock you. Are you ready to completely shatter the terrifying illusion of their power? It is time to step out of the heavy fog of their historical abuse and witness the bleak, undeniable reality of their current existence. Let us begin this intense, psychological deep dive into exactly why the aging narcissist is permanently trapped in a pathetic cycle of isolated, hidden self-gratification. The deeply broken psychology of the aging narcissist demands an entirely controlled environment. In the real world, they are constantly challenged, entirely ignored, or brutally exposed as massive frauds. But inside the locked bathroom, staring blankly at a screen or lost in deeply fabricated delusions, they remain the absolute star. They are the supreme ruler of a fake kingdom. As their physical appearance severely deteriorates, their deep, suppressed self-hatred violently amplifies. They cannot stand the undeniable reality of their aging, decaying body. This hidden physical compulsion allows them to mentally detach entirely from their physical form. They violently project themselves into a powerful, youthful fantasy where they are still highly desired. This private ritual is a deeply desperate attempt to frantically manufacture a false sense of vitality. They are chasing the ghost of their former, terrifying glory. Every single session of isolated gratification is a pathetic, deeply tragic effort to temporarily convince their severely broken brain that they still possess some shred of magnetic power, dominance, and dark control. Notice the intense, highly defensive aggression if you ever dare to question their excessive bathroom habits. They will aggressively gaslight you, violently accusing you of being paranoid, overly controlling, or completely insane. This extreme defensiveness is absolute proof of their deep shame. They are violently protecting the last pathetic refuge of their shattered false self. They secretly despise the fact that they are reduced to this entirely pathetic state. The narcissist has always viewed themselves as a superior, godlike entity. Realizing that their entire grand existence has shrunk down to desperately seeking a quick dopamine hit in a bathroom severely triggers their buried, agonizing narcissistic mortification. It is a profound, silent agony. The visual stimuli they utilize during these long, isolated sessions often reflect their deepest, most disturbing psychological sickness. They heavily gravitate toward scenarios involving absolute control, brutal dominance, or completely objectifying others. This entirely proves that their fundamental inability to experience authentic, beautiful human connection is entirely permanent. This hidden behavior completely destroys any remaining capacity they have for genuine, real-world intimacy. By constantly wiring their deteriorating brain to respond exclusively to synthetic, highly controlled fantasies, they become entirely emotionally impotent. They absolutely cannot function in a real, loving dynamic because reality is far too incredibly complex and demanding. The tragic irony is that this cheap, frantic coping mechanism absolutely accelerates their inevitable, total psychological collapse. The temporary dopamine rush rapidly fades, leaving an even larger, darker, and more terrifying void in its wake. They are entirely trapped in a vicious, unbreakable cycle of addiction, desperately chasing a fleeting high that permanently damages them. You might have falsely internalized their sudden lack of physical interest in you as a massive personal failure. You thought you were no longer attractive or entirely unworthy of their love. But their complete withdrawal into the bathroom has absolutely nothing to do with your incredible worth. It is a glaring, undeniable symptom of their own severe, rapidly advancing pathology. They are violently rejecting reality because reality is entirely rejecting them. The aging narcissist is utterly terrified of their rapidly approaching obsolescence. This private, highly secretive physical indulgence is their absolute last, pathetic line of defense against the crushing, undeniable weight of their total insignificance. They are hiding from the truth of their demise. The dramatic, completely inescapable turning point arrives when the synthetic fantasy finally fails to deliver the necessary emotional relief. The aging narcissist eventually hits a terrifying psychological wall. The quick dopamine hits suddenly stop masking the profound, agonizing emptiness of their hollow core. The locked bathroom violently transforms from a sanctuary to a prison. They suddenly realize, with absolute, chilling horror, that the physical release no longer silences the deafening, terrifying voices in their head. The deep, agonizing fears of abandonment, total worthlessness, and profound failure begin to actively bleed directly into their highly controlled fantasies. The heavy, dark walls of their sick delusion are rapidly caving in around them. This devastating failure of their ultimate coping mechanism triggers a massive, highly acute narcissistic injury. They violently stare at themselves in the bathroom mirror, completely unable to recognize the pathetic, hollowed-out ghost staring back. The grand, powerful illusion they spent decades aggressively building is permanently shattered, leaving only a terrified, broken child. In a sudden, desperate panic, they may attempt to drastically escalate their hidden behaviors, frantically seeking darker, more extreme stimuli to force a chemical reaction in their entirely deadened brain. But it is an absolutely useless endeavor. They are furiously attempting to restart a psychological engine that has completely, permanently seized up. The internal machine is dead. Their completely impotent rage violently spills out of the bathroom and directly into their reality. You will suddenly notice an entirely new level of unprovoked, chaotic hostility. They are intensely furious at the world, at their aging body, and at you, simply because their secret, pathetic escape hatch has completely failed them. They are wildly thrashing in a dark, empty void. The shift in the profound power dynamic becomes entirely absolute. You, the resilient empath, begin to see the undeniable, pathetic truth hiding perfectly behind their aggressive mask. You realize that the terrifying monster you once deeply feared is actually just a miserable, broken, aging shell of a person, desperately hiding in a tiny room to escape their own horrific mind. This profound realization instantly strips away the final, lingering remnants of their phantom power over you. They can no longer manipulate your deep, beautiful empathy. You are completely immune to their desperate, toxic projections. The heavy, dark spell is permanently broken, and you are finally observing them through the crystal-clear, objective lens of pure psychological truth. As your formidable boundaries remain perfectly intact, the narcissist experiences a terrifying sensation akin to sudden, violent suffocation. They deeply realize the profound well of your genuine empathy is permanently dry. The ensuing panic is visceral. The constant, crushing stress of trying to survive without their secret coping mechanism causes profound, highly visible mental decay. They become a permanent, miserable prisoner in the hellish, incredibly dark landscape of their own twisted creation. The cold bathroom tiles offer absolutely no warmth, no love, and zero redemption. They cannot escape the agonizing, brutal reality that they maliciously destroyed the absolute best, most pure thing they ever had, completely replacing it with an empty, dark compulsion. The magnificent, empowering twist of this dark narrative is finally fully revealed. The exact coping mechanism they aggressively use to avoid genuine intimacy has become the exact, undeniable catalyst for their final, absolute undoing. They isolated themselves so completely that they entirely forgot how to exist in the real, human world. Their pathetic secret has destroyed them. The psychological collapse now aggressively enters its final, darkest, and completely irreversible phase. The narcissist's daily life rapidly becomes a pathetic, deeply agonizing series of profound, unexplainable losses. People are instinctively repelled by their dark, heavy, intensely rotting aura. They are universally recognized as deeply unsettling, entirely miserable individuals. They experience a total, horrifying, and complete fragmentation of the fabricated false self. The carefully constructed public mask violently shatters into millions of unrecoverable, deeply jagged pieces. The fake, arrogant confidence is violently replaced by a crippling, deeply paranoid, and entirely inescapable anxiety. They possess absolutely zero emotional tools to cope with this. This is the sudden, brutal, and completely absolute death of the narcissistic ego. It is not a physical demise, but a profound, agonizing psychological obliteration. They become entirely unrecognizable from the arrogant, untouchable predator who once brutally tormented you. They are severely hollowed out, incredibly empty vessels wandering aimlessly through a completely dead reality. They desperately try to retreat further into absolute, suffocating isolation, hiding their pathetic, undeniable deterioration from the unforgiving, highly observant eyes of the world. The locked bathroom becomes their entire pathetic universe. The terrifying, heavy silence of their lonely, isolated reality rapidly becomes a personalized, inescapable, dark psychological torture chamber. Notice their complete, devastating, and entirely permanent lack of genuine internal peace. A true, resilient empath, even in the deepest, most agonizing pain, can eventually find profound moments of pure stillness and quiet grace. The collapsed narcissist will absolutely never, ever know this comfort. Their internal mental landscape is a perpetually burning, highly toxic wasteland. The severe social consequences they inevitably face are brutally, intensely unforgiving. The shallow flying monkeys and weak, easily manipulated enablers who once heavily supported their dark, abusive reign eventually abandon the sinking, miserable ship. The abuser is forcefully made to face the harsh, undeniable truth. Their entire life was built entirely on a foundation of lies. The physical toll of this massive psychological collapse is deeply horrifying to witness. The constant, agonizing stress of maintaining their fragile delusions entirely ravages their aging body. They begin to look completely hollow, deeply exhausted, and incredibly sickly. The outer shell is finally, accurately reflecting the intensely dark, rotting corruption of their empty interior. There is a profound, undeniable, and cinematic justice in this horrific, sudden collapse. It is a terrifying, absolute testament to the universal, unbreakable law of emotional gravity. You absolutely cannot constantly exploit the brilliant light of others without eventually burning your own soul entirely alive. The massive emotional debt they accumulated has finally come due in full. They are entirely, brutally forced to witness you safely moving on with your beautiful life. Even from afar, the undeniable glow of your genuine, hard-won healing deeply penetrates their dark, pathetic isolation. Seeing the empath beautifully thrive without them is the final, fatal, crushing blow. It undeniably proves that they were the absolute sickness, and you were the cure. The tragic, unavoidable end of the aging abuser is a chilling spectacle of total self-destruction. They meticulously laid the cruel traps and entirely burned their own bridges, only to heavily realize far too late that they permanently locked themselves inside their own burning psychological prison. The brutal destruction they intended for you became the exact blueprint for their ruin. You must absolutely, firmly, and permanently stop carrying the heavy burden of their inevitable, deeply tragic destruction. The profound empathy you possess is a sacred, beautiful gift, even if it was maliciously weaponized against you in the dark. Do not waste a single, precious drop of pity on the collapsing, miserable abuser. Their total breakdown is an entirely natural consequence. Recognize the absolute, unshakable, and completely glorious truth right now. You did not break them. You simply, bravely stopped allowing them to completely break your spirit. By establishing your ironclad boundaries and permanently closing the door on their toxic access, you merely allowed their deeply poisonous nature to finally consume them entirely. You are totally innocent here. Your essential, beautiful journey right now is about intense, unapologetic, and fierce emotional reclamation. Every single agonizing tear you shed in the dark was deeply watering the vital seeds of your ultimate, unbreakable psychological armor. The deep pain was horrific, but it forged a magnificent version of you that is completely impervious to dark manipulation. You survived it all. The narcissist's tragic, sudden psychological death is your absolute, undeniable, and completely permanent liberation. As their false, fragile reality violently crumbles to ash, your authentic, beautiful life is finally allowed to spectacularly blossom. The heavy, suffocating, highly toxic fog they forcefully placed over your brilliant mind is lifting permanently. You are free now. Do not look back at the horrifying, pathetic wreckage they have finally, undeniably become. The collapsing, deeply desperate abuser wants absolutely nothing more than to violently drag you down into the dark abyss with them. Let them completely thrash in the absolute dark. Let them drown in the terrifying silence of their empty, pathetic souls. You must fiercely protect your peace. This profound, secret knowledge is your ultimate, impenetrable, and incredibly glorious shield. By deeply understanding the pathetic, incredibly fragile nature of their severe, hidden pathology, you entirely strip them of all their remaining, phantom power. They are absolutely not powerful masterminds. They are deeply broken, severely flawed entities spiraling toward a tragic end. Your incredible, beautiful survival is the greatest, most profound rebellion against their severe, highly calculated abuse. They desperately wanted you permanently destroyed, completely silenced, and totally dependent on their false reality. By fiercely choosing to heal, by daring to thrive brilliantly, you completely annihilate their entire sinister purpose. Your genuine joy is justice. The highly toxic, dangerous connection is permanently, utterly, and brilliantly severed. You are absolutely no longer their emotional, psychological punching bag. You are a sovereign, magnificent survivor, glowing brilliantly with a renewed, entirely untouchable light. The deep scars you carry are profound, beautiful battle wounds signifying your massive, undeniable human resilience. As the broken narcissist rapidly fades into total, miserable obscurity, slowly rotting away in the horrifying, locked prison of their own shattered mind, you are just beautifully beginning to rise. The intense contrast is deeply poetic and absolutely, perfectly just. You are safely ascending into a spectacular life of genuine joy, while they sadly choke on their own bitter, dark ashes. You completely survive the absolute psychological slaughter. You bravely unmasked the terrifying monster, forcefully starved the desperate parasite, and successfully watched the entire grand illusion burn straight to the ground. They utterly broke themselves trying to maliciously break your spirit. Your brilliant light remains untouched. Walk forward knowing the battle is finally won.